Hey folks, it's Jim from Slick Audio. A tired Jim from Slick Audio, as if you can't tell. It is hump day. Anyways, talking about the magic question, can RAM solve all of your audio computer problems? Answer equals no. No, it can't. Can it solve some? Yes. RAM, random access memory, is the stuff that holds data temporarily. So when programs are in use for speed, that's where it manipulates the code. Technical term, I guess. Whereas your hard drives are storage. So can RAM solve the problem? Well, first of all, there's we have a couple of things that are in mind. We have the operating system and its core functions, whether it's Windows, Linux, Mac OS, doesn't really matter. I mean, bottom line is an OS takes RAM takes disk space, amongst other things inside the operating system. So it's going to consume some RAM, some memory. I'm just going to call it memory from this point on. Then you have your DAW, which is going to consume some memory as well. And then you have your ASIO device in Windows, or your core audio and that other OS. But bottom line is your interface is going to require drivers that are going to suck up some RAM as well. Now you've got every plugin that you use. Some plugins are really light and use a little teeny tiny bit of RAM, and some are really kind of big. And it depends on what they're doing. So it's not that they're, yes, some I'm sure are written poorly, but for the most part, it depends on the function of what it is. So that consumes memory, and then you have, of course, VSTIs, or virtual instruments. Virtual instruments can consume a lot of RAM depending on how you have them set up. You could tell certain VSTIs to only load the bare necessities. You can have them load, some are customizable, where meaning that you could say, I want to load, you can have so much memory to use. Some don't necessarily ask at all, and some you could say, load the whole damn sample library into, or not the library, sorry, but the sample that you're loading, load the entire thing into RAM as opposed to dynamically bringing it up. So bottom line is VSTIs can definitely be a hog, but most people don't run it the last way that I just mentioned, loading everything in. That's actually quite foolish. And so that leaves then these four major components, if you will, that are going to consume RAM. So you've got to understand how many tracks are you going to run, and when I mean that in two different fashions. So part one, or one side of the equation, is recording. How many tracks am I going to record simultaneously at the same time? And then how many tracks am I going to record to play back during mixdown? So your total number of tracks in a particular project. And then how many plugins are going to go in there, and how many VSTIs or virtual instruments are running within those tracks. So again, that goes for both live and the other. So those all really come into the equation. So there is definitely a minimum. 16 gig is the minimum amount of RAM that you should be using, period. And quite honestly, that's kind of like, you're not doing a whole heck of a lot of tracks with 16 gig of RAM. You're definitely not doing virtual instruments with 16 gig of RAM. You certainly can track with it. It's just, don't expect the world out of the machine. At some point, when RAM fills up, it goes into, I'm just going to call it, it's actually a swap file. It actually goes into a chunk on hard disk. So it'll take the operating system, look at it and say, oh, well, I'm out of RAM, so I need to make some. So it'll take the least used, and it's going to take a chunk of that, and it's going to write that down to a hard drive, which is, inherently slow compared to the speed of memory itself.